This morning, we're in week 2 of our habit series, and I just want to share with you a message entitled, Make Your Move. You ever been on the freeway and you're merging onto the freeway, you're trying to merge onto the freeway, and somebody will not make their move? You ever been there? You're like, come on, speed up, slow down, do something, but get over. Come on, somebody. I can't be the only one who's been there, all right? And you're talking to traffic, talking to people. I don't know how you're talking to them, but you're talking to them, right? And you're telling them, you got to make your move. Or maybe you've been in the same place for a long time, and you're like, I'm just ready to make my move. I want to go to a new place, a new adventure, a new house, whatever that might look like for you. Or maybe there's a special someone, a special lady, guys, in your life, a special guy, ladies, that you've had your eye on, and you're like, it's time for me to make my move. Come on now. I remember when I had to make my move with my wife, and I was 18 years old, and she was 17, way out of my league. You already know this. She was just up here leading worship. You can tell. You're like, that guy with that gal. Sometimes, you see couples, you're like, how did that happen? The Lord is good. Come on now. But yeah, so I was ready to make my move, and I called her up to go on this first date. I had Blazer tickets as a basketball fan, and somebody had given me Blazer tickets. I was like, hey, lady, and I didn't talk like that. I was like, hey, Carol, you want to go on this date with me? I had a higher pitched voice back then, and she's like, nah, I'm busy, and when you don't prepare for that moment, and you just gut punch there, and so then, but I was a determined young man, and so I made another move, and I asked her out again, and we went out to a restaurant. Come on, she said yes, and I flung a fork all the way across the restaurant there from my table. I was so nervous and like shaking inside, and we went to a movie, and then eventually I had to make my move for the first kiss. Oh yeah, it was Christmas time. It was Christmas time, so I got some Hershey Kisses. I busted out some mistletoe. Come on, somebody. That's a guy's best friend right there. We had our first kiss on her parents' front porch there. And thankfully, as they say, the story, the rest of the story, maybe some of you do, and it's been good after that, and she's been so good to me. She did remind me that I was a lot more romantic back then, and maybe I need to step up my game a little bit. She's talking to me today, so I got some work to do this year. Maybe you got some habits you need to put into place. You need to make your move again, all right? But if you go through your life, you probably realize that your last time you went to work or the last time you went to school, it looked a lot like the day before that, and it might look a lot like the next day that you're going to go back. You get up and maybe you go into the bathroom, brush your teeth, or maybe you go downstairs and brew a pot of coffee, and you get on with your day and have breakfast, get ready. You drive the same way to work or the same way to school that you normally go, and you might even eat at the same places or eat the same meals that you normally eat, and you drive home after doing the same tasks the same way that you always go, and then you get home and you go through the same routine. Maybe you make dinner or you have dinner and you sit down, and then maybe you have kids and you put them to bed, and that takes a little while, and you got to yell at them a few times, get back in your room, go to sleep, that kind of stuff, and then you finally sit down and you watch the same TV shows that you always watch, bust out some Netflix, and then you scroll through social media like you always do, and you finally go off to bed. But I bet that a lot of your day actually looks very similar from day to day, and there's a reason for that. Because much of what we normally do isn't a result of a conscious choice or conscious choices, but rather it's the result of daily habits. Duke University did a study a while back, and they found that over 40% of what we do, 40% of what we do in a day is based simply out of the habits that we have in our life. So habits are incredibly crucial, because if you have the wrong habits, it can be very detrimental, but if you have the right habits, it can truly be life-changing. So if you want to change your life here today, if you want to go somewhere different, if you don't maybe like who you're becoming, or you want to become more like that person that you are, then you have to change your habits. And so let's talk a little bit about what we kind of hit on last week. We all have similar goals, right? We said we all have similar. No one's out there saying, you know what, I just hope to gain a bunch of weight and be really unhealthy, or to be really unhappy, or to have no friends. No one's saying those things. We all have the same goals. We want to live healthier. We want to be happier. We want to find hope. We all have it. Yet we have drastically different results. And the reason for that often is because we don't see the payoff fast enough. And so we don't allow the small disciplines to add up over time. And we come to the wrong conclusion because of that. Really, two wrong conclusions. The first one is that small good decisions don't matter that much. And the second one is small bad decisions don't matter that much. You hit the scale after you've been working out all week and it doesn't look any different. And you think this is just not working out. But know this, our life is the sum total of the small decisions that we make. Goals don't determine your success. If they did, everyone would be really successful. Everyone sets goals, but systems determine our success, habits. James Clear said, I read it last week, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And then this is our theme statement for the entire series. Successful people do consistently what other people do occasionally. This year we're going to do consistently maybe what other people are only doing occasionally. We're going to consistently come to church. We're going to consistently work out. We're going to consistently eat healthy. We're going to be consistent in our workplace, consistent as a parent, consistent as a spouse, so that we can grow and grow closer to God. So let's look at a powerful example of a man who really had one system or one habit that made a huge difference, and that man is Daniel. Now, if you're like me, I told you I didn't grow up in church, so I didn't know the story of Daniel. But Daniel, just so you know, he ends up in a lion's den, but he comes out alive. That's a pretty amazing feat, if you ask me. Yet, one of the other things that was really amazing to me is he was also a young man who was a foreigner in a land, and he rose to a place of prominence and power. In fact, there were 120 young men like him, and he was the cream of the crop. And we're going to read what really set him apart in Daniel chapter 6, verse 3 here right now. It says this, Now Daniel so distinguished himself. It could say he so set himself apart. He broke away from the pack. He so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps, the others who were like him, by his exceptional qualities, that so much so that the king planned to set him over the whole kingdom. So Daniel was in line to be the number 2 guy. It was going to be the king and then Daniel as his right-hand man. Why? Because Daniel, if you read throughout the first 5 chapters, you find that he had a spirit of excellence, that he was dedicated, he was disciplined. He wouldn't even eat some of what the other people were eating because he wanted to follow and obey God. He was an incredible leader, and so the king planned to promote him. But there's a story behind every story, and we said last week that it's the things that no one sees that give us the results that everyone wants. It's the things that no one sees in your life that bring about the results that everyone wants. But before we answer the question of really about Daniel, I want you to know one thing. That success breeds jealousy. Success breeds jealousy. Whenever you break away from the pack will always try and bring you back. People will say things like, oh, you're not the same person anymore. Oh, you've changed. That should be a compliment, to be perfectly honest. But sometimes they mean it as a dig, don't they? Oh, you've betrayed who you really are. When you start to better yourself, you start to grow in your life. And so Daniel had some enemies who were trying to tear him down as well. They were looking for a flaw, a defect, some way to disqualify him, a weakness that he had. And I want to read in Daniel 6:4 what it says about this. It says, At this, the administrators, the satraps, the enemies of Daniel tried to find grounds for charges against him in his conduct of government affairs, but they were unable to do so. In fact, they could find no corruption in him because he was trustworthy and he was neither corrupt nor negligent. Not only was Daniel not a bad person, he was a diligent person. I just want to side note this for a moment. I think a lot of times people who are not Christians, they look at people who are Christians and they kind of look across and they see Christians yelling at them and telling them how bad they are and what they're doing wrong. And the problem that we have sometimes in society and culture as Christians that we got to combat is that a lot of times we're yelling straight at them and they're looking at us and they're saying, well, you have a different life. You're different, but you're not ahead of where I am. You're no better. There's not real joy or real love. There's obviously some problems. You got to get on Facebook to express every opinion because you're not really being able to be fulfilled in Jesus. And then, so what happens is they see that we're different, but we're not diligent. Because diligence breaks you apart from the pack. And that's what people want. If they just see different, who cares if we're just different? Why don't we move ahead in our faith and actually give something for people to want in our life? That's what will be the transformative way to reach people. And so here's Daniel, and he has these enemies, and they're pressuring the king. And in fact, they really trick him. You ever had somebody come suck up to you, and you knew that they wanted something else? Like your kids are like, Mom, Dad, I love you so much. And you're like, what do you want? You ever been there? All right, I know I can't be the only one, and I'm probably not the only one who's ever done it. And this is kind of what they go to the king. King, you're just so great. You're so worthy. Like, I think no one should bow or worship anyone but you. You're just like worthy of all the worship. So why don't we just put into effect this decree, this law for 30 days? No one can worship anyone but you. And he's like feeling good about it. So yeah, that's right. I am good. And so he goes ahead and he signs it like a fool. And the problem is that Daniel is not going to worship him. And we're going to see that here in verse 10. It says, now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, really the decree said this, that if anyone worshiped anyone other than the king, they'd be thrown in the lion's den. When he learned about this, he went home to his upstairs room where the windows opened toward Jerusalem. In other words, so where everybody could see. 3 times he got down on his knees and he prayed, giving thanks to God. And I want you to catch this verse. Just as he had done before. What did Daniel do? He prayed, just as he had done before. See, one small habit, like this little tiny domino, day after day after day, began to knock down another domino in Daniel's life. And pretty soon, Daniel was known as the guy who loves his God, the guy who prays to his God, so much so that his enemies knew that that was the way they would have to take him down. But Daniel knew that he could not stop this one small little thing, because this is where his source of confidence came from. This is where his faith grew and developed. And I just want to encourage you this morning with this statement. Never underestimate how God can do something big through one small habit, one small discipline. Any part of my life, if you were to look at it, any part that's successful, it has a habit behind it. There's somewhere along the way. If I'm any better at being a dad or a husband or a pastor or a leader, it's because there's a habit that formed behind it. I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I am pretty consistent in a few habits. And a few I just wanted to share with you that I picked up, most of them in the last 5 years, but the first one I picked up the day that I made the decision to follow Jesus. That was 25 years ago, and I said this. I said, whenever I can go to church, I'm going to church. That's been who I've been for 25 years. I can tell you there are times and moments like when we've been in ministry and times when we've not. But my kids have never woken up and said, Mom, Dad, are we going to church? It's like never, ever a question. They just know this is what we do. This is who we are. We go to church. We love people. We love God. And this is who we're going to be. And so do you have those types of habits in your life? Now, there's lots of other habits, a few that I'll kind of talk to you about. I said one year I wanted to get healthy, so I stopped drinking pop, or some of y'all say soda because that's wrong, but it's all right. I'll pray for you. All right? So I stopped drinking that, and then I decided I'm going to work out, all right, and be consistent in working out. And so I do that just about we do it several times every week, and my wife and sometimes our oldest son will join us quite often as well. I said I'm going to cut back in sweets, and so now I eat healthier. Listen, I know this isn't going to sound like an impressive goal, all right, an impressive habit, right? But I have a habit that I want to start this year that I'm going to eat one vegetable every day, at least one vegetable every day. And some of you are like, that's very sad. It is, I know, okay. I'm 40 years old, finally eating vegetables. Just how it works. I can't. I'm sorry. I said one year I want to learn more, and so I set a goal to read 50 books. I didn't quite read 50 books, but now, honestly, it's not hard for me to read 25 books in a year. It's not even hard because I just do it all the time. It became a habit. I started listening to podcasts, and specific ones in particular, because I knew that I could glean great information that would help me, encourage me, and help me to grow in my faith. Every day I read my daily affirmation. I've talked to some of you about this before in previous messages, where I basically just declare what God has called me to be and who He's called me to be for that day, so that I can be reminded and go out with a positive, right mindset for the day. One year I said I'm going to journal. And I failed really, really bad. So I said, you know what? I'm gonna decide to journal again. And I made that another kind of declaration, a habit I wanted to build. And I failed really, really, really bad the next time. And so now I have some journals. I haven't started yet. So sometimes you don't hit. I want that one to stick, but I think I need to reformulate the plan, the system, the habit a little bit. A few years ago, I decided I'm going to read my Bible every day, which tells you something. I didn't always read my Bible every day. So some of you who are beating yourself up because you missed a couple days of your Bible reading plan, can I just tell you, stop? You're going to be okay. Jesus is still on the throne. It's still okay. Would you just pick it up again, dust it off if you need to, and get going again, and let's just start this year right? Let's make 2020 the greatest year we could have. Come on, somebody. One of my other goals this year was, and we've not been real good about it, but it's something that's going to take some time, is just to pray with Carol every single day. It's not long, just for a couple minutes, just to stop and pray with her every single day. But there are some habits in our life that are actually more potent, more powerful than others. They're what Charles Duhigg would call in his book, The Power of Habit, what he would call keystone habits. And they're keystone habits because they have the power to influence other areas of your life. For Daniel, that habit was prayer. And it bled into other areas of your life. That's why we talk about so much about reading your Bible and praying, because I believe when you do those things, they begin to bleed into other areas of your life, and they'll help you with the other habits that you have. But those are foundational keystone habits if you are a person who is trying to follow Jesus. But for me, I need something to kickstart my day. I don't know what, some of you might need caffeine. There's one thing that I need to happen and my day will go drastically different. And it's not very big. It doesn't seem very important, but it's this one thing. I just have to get out of bed on time. On time. Come on, somebody. All right. I got to get out of bed on time. If I get out of bed on time, then I will go and I will work out. And if I work out, I will read my Bible. And if I read my Bible, I will pray. If I pray, I will eat a healthy breakfast. If I eat that healthy breakfast, I feel more disciplined. And at that point, and therefore my production throughout the day is higher. I stay on task better, which means that I'm done on time, which means that I get to spend time with my kids when they get home, which Carol loves to see, which means we get to spend time together. And that's how we have 5 kids. All because I got out of bed on time. Some of you struggling, I'm going to help you out today. Now, when I don't get out of bed on time, I feel all out of sorts. I feel lethargic. I don't work out. I don't pick up my Bible. I don't always pray. And then, therefore, I don't feel disciplined, so I skip my breakfast, which makes me irritable. It means I produce less, means that I'm always playing catch-up, which means that I'm working later into the day, and I don't have as much time to spend with my kids, which means that Carol's not as happy with me, and so when we do get to spend time together, it's just not quite as good. I just leave it at that. All because I didn't get out of bed on time. Now, I know that might be overly simplistic, but I think there's a lot of truth and power to what I just said. See, as a follower of Jesus, we need to be spiritually strong, and that doesn't just magically happen. Like, you don't all of a sudden have muscle. You know what I found is you can often just develop a gut, though. One habit we need to have, what's the one habit you need to have this year? The one habit you need to start. One small discipline that will move you in the right direction. And here's the thing, it doesn't have to be big. This is where we go wrong. In fact, it's better if the habit is small. It's just one small thing. And it might be for you just not hitting the snooze button. It might be opening the Bible app before you get on Instagram. Might be praying with your kids before they go to bed. And you have to think about the person you want to become. If you want to be somebody who cares more for people, maybe you just write one letter or one postcard every single day, just giving thanks and showing appreciation for someone. Maybe you want to be more organized, so you decide to make your bed in the morning. You want to be a godly example to your teenagers, so you decide to read a Bible plan together. You want to be a person that's more focused, so you start with a list of 3 priorities for your day, and you don't get sucked into the vortex of life until those 3 priorities are taken care of. You want to be a person who's healthier, so you cut out some things or you start eating a little bit healthier. But this morning, I want to talk to you about how to create a new habit. And each of us, to create a new habit, has to have a system. And you might say, Ray, I'm not a systems person. Yes, you are. Your system might be that you have no system. Like, I just go with the flow wherever life takes me, but that's your system. Everyone has a system, even if it's by default and not intentional. Your system might be that you wake up late every day, so you don't have time to shower because you overslept. So you just kind of throw in some mouthwash, throw in some deodorant, and hope that that's good enough. And on the way to work, you're frazzled, so you yell at traffic on the way. You gripe to everyone on the way. All day long, nobody wants to talk to you because you stink and you got bad breath, and you feel bad about that. So you go home angry, and you just start yelling at your kids. You start yelling at your spouse, and you get in a fight, and then you go to bed and you feel guilty. That's a system. It's not a good system, but it's a system. And so if you want to break out of some of these systems, we got to begin to realize what's setting us off. And just about any book that you read on habits, you'll find something in it called the habit loop. You'll see it there in your notes. And they might call it different names, but they're all the same ideas. And the first thing that you'll see is you'll find a trigger or a cue, and that's what starts the habit. We'll see something online. We'll get bored. We'll get hungry. You'll walk by a certain spot. Somebody might walk into the room. You get lonely. It's the beginning of the day. It's the end of the day. There's a trigger or a cue, and that leads to an action or a response. An action or a response. This is where you're scrolling through Amazon and you buy the item. You start going through social media because you're bored. You eat a bag of chips because you're feeling lonely. You pray with your kids because you walk by their door. You sleep in a little later because it's the beginning of the day, or you try and stay up late because it's the end of the day and you don't want to miss out on anything. And then that action in response is followed by a reward. This is where you get the dopamine hit. All right, that chemical in our body that brings a degree of pleasure. It's the feeling of the action. You eat the candy bar and it's the taste of the chocolate. I'm sorry right now if any of you are hungry. But that's the habit loop, and then the process simply just repeats itself. So how do we start a new habit? Just a few things that I want to share with you for the next 10, 15 minutes or so. The first thing that we have to do, make it obvious. Make it obvious. Now, I worked in grocery for about 5 years, and then I sold ice cream and cookies for about 6 years. Those are not what we would call in the business necessity items. Those are not essentials. They're what we would call impulse buys. So the whole way that we would really generate sales is we had to make it obvious to people. And so my whole goal when setting up a display would be to set it up in the very front of the store. It could be the exact same display, the exact same items, same layout, everything. But if it was in the front of the store versus the back of the store, I would sell 20 to 50 times as much in the front. All because it was obvious. And here's the takeaway for us here today. If you want to change what you do, then change what you see. Now, you can't do that all the time, but there are lots of ways we can do it. If you want to change what you do, then change what you see. If you want to take vitamins, don't stuff them in the drawer and throw them in the back. Take them out the night before, put them next to your sink with a cup for water, and so it's all ready to take out the next morning. If you want to read before you go to bed, when you wake up and you make your bed, put your book on your pillow. Work out. You want to work out, then put out your clothes the night before in a place that you're going to easily go, that you would already be walking. Or, hey, even sleep in your workout clothes if you just need to make it really, really obvious, all right? And this moves us to the next point. The second part is you got to make it easy. So make it obvious, make it easy. And this is where it can be fun. Here's how a lot of us set goals. We do these gigantic plans, and then we make it so hard to even accomplish it because it's got so many steps, so we need to make it easy. So if you want to read your Bible, start by reading one verse a day. Just get the YouVersion Bible verse of the day right to your phone. First thing you do is you just read it. If you want to pray with your spouse, just take their hand and thank God for one thing. Thank you, God, that we live in Arizona in January and other people are shoveling snow right now. Thank you, God, that we didn't kill our kids today. Come on, somebody. just thank God for one thing. If you want to start a blog, write a sentence, come up with a topic. You want to get healthier, do 10 push-ups. You can't do 10 push-ups, do 5. You can't do 2, do 1. You can't do 1, do it on your knees. You can't do 1 on your knees, just lay down and get back up. Just make it easy. You get the point. I believe that many of us get so disappointed and so defeated because we think we lack the willpower and the motivation. But what we really lack is a good system that's going to make it easy for us to start. If you're not reaching your goals, chances are you don't have a goal problem, you have a system problem. So don't beat yourself up. Just evaluate the systems and the habits that you have in your life. See, goals are helpful to give us direction. But habits and systems, those are really the fuel that allow you to make progress in your life, to really drive forward. So make it obvious, make it easy, and lastly, connect it. Connect your habits that you are wanting to habits that you already have. And this is what it might look like. You'll say, I will do blank after I blank. I will do, what's your trigger, after the action that I'm already taking. Daniel said, I will pray after I wake up. I will pray after I have lunch. I will pray before I go to bed. He was already waking up. He was already going to bed. He was already eating lunch. I'm just going to attach a habit to it. Now, my morning looks like this. When I get up on time, go into the bathroom, I brush my teeth, I get ready to work out, put on my workout clothes, I go downstairs, I move the coffee table because we work out in our living room. I get out some water, Carol gets out our mats, we get our weights, then we work out, then I grab my Bible, and I read 2 chapters in a proverb. I read the proverb whatever day of the month, so today's the 12th, so I read the 12th proverb today. Then I read my daily affirmation, and I pray. Then I take a shower, and I take my 2 older boys to school. I eat my breakfast, I pray with Carol, and I begin my day of work. That's what my morning looks like. Here's what I found is if you really want to be successful with habits, if you can bookend your days a little bit, because the middle of the day can often get away from us, and it can be really difficult. But you can often control your morning, and maybe you can control your evening. So when you start to get those things in order, it's crazy how the middle of your day starts to come into a little bit of order as well. It begins to bleed into everything else. But if you don't start right, it can be discouraging for the rest of the day. If you don't end right, you can wonder what the next day is going to be like. So bookend your days there, connect them together. Because these habits for me, they help me to be not only healthier physically, but they align my heart and my mind with God. So what's it going to be for you? After I make coffee, I'm going to read 1 Bible verse because now I'm awake. After I put my kids in bed, I'm going to do a 30-second plank. Come on, somebody. After I brush my teeth, I'm going to journal 1 sentence. After I journal 1 sentence, I'm going to take the hand of my spouse and I'm going to thank God for 1 thing. I don't know what it is for you, but I do know that successful people do consistently what other people only do occasionally. So who do you want to be? Because you don't need better goals today. You need better systems. I mentioned it earlier, but when it comes to muscle, it doesn't just happen. You have to be intentional about it. But the truth is we always drift toward the place of least resistance. So today we got to make our move to the right place. Daniel had the habit of praying 3 times a day. That was his move, a system that made him the man that God wanted him to be. And I just want to encourage you with a verse, because sometimes we think, you know what, small doesn't really matter. No one sees, no one's going to come pat you on the back. No one might even notice or say anything. But I'm going to read Zechariah chapter 4, verse 10, and I want you to read when God celebrates. Do not despise the day of small beginnings, he says, for the Lord rejoices not when the work is completed, not when you've accomplished your goal. He rejoices to see the work begin. So make your move today. Take a step in the right direction. Create some momentum. Change your identity, who you are today, and become more like Jesus. I close with a a personal story about myself. For some of you, you know a dirty little secret about me, and it's that I'm rarely satisfied. In fact, I met with the advisory board the other day, and they were giving me a hard time about it. I can be hypercritical. I'm always thinking about the next thing. Even yesterday, we were with our team, and it's so easy for me to see all the things that we're not doing or the things that we aren't yet. And for years and years, my goals have been means goals, and I want to explain what a means goal is. It might look like this. You say, I'm going to work hard, and working hard means I'm going to have to stay late. So I stay late so I can get noticed, so I can eventually one day get the promotion, so one day I can make more money, so one day I can meet this special person, and one day we can be married and go on a great honeymoon, so one day we can have a family, so one day we can buy a house, and the so's keep on coming. And you always think, one day I'll be happy. One day I'll be fulfilled when I get this, when that happens, I get the promotion, I make more money, I meet this person, or I don't have to worry about this, and then I'll be happy. Can I tell you it's a lie? You know what Proverbs says with that type of means thinking that's always attached to something out in the future? It says that hope deferred, one day hope will come. Hope deferred makes our heart sick. I truly believe this for myself and for many. The reason that so many people just struggle, I'm not saying it's the only reason, but it's one of the reasons. It's an ingredient in the recipe. So many people struggle with anxiety and depression is because we're always living for something out there. It's always got to be, then I'll be happy. But as I really evaluate it, I said that it's always a means to an end. What if we just looked at the end? And at the end, I think we find not a what, but a who. Because the end is Jesus. And the only end that really is worth living for is Him. Mark 8:36 says, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world, but he loses his soul? And I always read that through the lens of being greedy, like wanting more and never being sad. But then I thought about, I think sometimes I do that very thing. Because then Jesus isn't enough. Because my happiness is tied to something that's somewhere out in the future. But what if Jesus could just be enough today? What if we stopped with the so goals, so one day? What if we put away the do goals, just the task and the list of the things that we're going to do, and we said, finally, God, this year I want to set some who goals. I want to be someone different. Because the truth is, there's no reason to want anything that doesn't bring us closer to Jesus, that doesn't bring glory to God. And if that becomes the driving force of who we are, of our life, then I want you to see something. Success is not somewhere out there in the future. Success is not when you get what you want. No, success is when you've honored God with one small act of faithfulness today. Not out there. Now, the Bible says in Luke 16, whoever can be trusted with very little can be trusted with very much. You know what my problem is? I'm always thinking about the very much, so I'm like, okay, God, I'll be really faithful with the little so I can get to the very much. But what if the key to the game isn't about getting the much? What if the key to the game is just about faithfulness? What if that's really the secret? Don't fool yourself. You're not successful when you get more. You're successful when you're faithful today. So church, would you make your move? Would you stop waiting? Would you take a risk? Would you move forward and watch what God can do through you this year? Would you bow your heads and close your eyes?